Hey there, it's your career insider, Cindy Thomas. Welcome to Season 3 of the Insiders Career Club podcast, where industry professionals share the inside, and I've got that in air quotes, scoop on their careers. Listeners know that I'm an HR career professional who's been in TA for over 25 years. But did you also know that I coach clients and help them plan and grow their careers, manage career transitions, help refine your interviewing skills, or I can help you work on a job search strategy? Now, have you been passed over for a promotion or a raise? Maybe you're frustrated because you're interviewing but not getting the job offer. If that's happened to you, let me help you get back on track. Sign up for a free coaching call today with me at insiderscareerclub.com. Remember, it's possible for you to have a great and a fulfilling career. Let's get you the career you deserve. Now, don't go anywhere. Up next is a great podcast. Stay tuned. Hey, insiders. This week's guest is author, speaker, attorney, and happiness virtuosa, Dannie De Novo. She's an international best-selling author and a happiness coach. Now, after having battled depression and anxiety for most of her early life, she set out on a course to learn what true happiness was, for her sake as well as for her baby girl. Though she's still a practicing attorney, Dannie regularly appears on ABC, Fox, NBC, and CBS TV news and talk shows as an expert on creating happiness, combating loneliness and depression, as well as managing anxiety. Let's welcome her in. Good morning, Dannie. How are you today?
I am wonderful. How are you?
I'm really good. Welcome to the Insiders Career Club podcast. I'm really looking forward to our chat today.
Me too.
Tell us a little bit about yourself. Where did you grow up?
I grew up in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. I grew up riding horses. My father owned a boarding stable. So I grew up with my ponies and then graduated onto horses from there and spent a lot of time with the animals. Honestly, the one thing that probably saved me through a very early depression that started probably around the age of 13 or 14 for me.
That's young. And I know there are a lot of young children suffering from depression. So we'll talk some more about it. But yeah, it's a very prevalent thing that's going on now. And we see it with the suicides and the shootings and bullying on social media, right?
Right. A lot of anxiety as well.
So what kinds of things are you still writing?
I do still ride. Yes. And I'm teaching my daughter. She's 7. She's learning how to ride now, although she does take instruction a little bit better from my brother than she does from me. She's doing good.
Yeah, it can be too much of mom. Let me have somebody else. Huh?
Right. Mom doesn't know what she's talking about. I'll listen to Uncle.
My sister had a couple of horses and she rode. I was never into it, but I just love horses. They're just beautiful animals. And to see them even just on the screen, running, it's just amazing.
Yeah, they're very empathetic animals. I had one horse that she knew as soon as I got close to her, she would sniff me and she would know what kind of mood I was in, or she would know if something was wrong with me. She would know if I was sick. They're just really intuitive animals.
So you had been, before you got to your current profession, which we'll get to, but you decided that you were going to be an attorney. What made you decide to study law?
Well, there was a lot going on. So I went through a really bad depression, as I mentioned. It started in my early teens and it went through most of my life from there. I had always thought that I wanted to be a doctor. And then my academic career, among other things, got derailed in my teens and early 20s. I was kind of left rethinking life and rethinking directions in life. And I had become a paramedic and a volunteer firefighter, and I was really into public safety. And 9/11 happened. And so I just remember thinking at the time, I would have loved to have been a help during that time. How could I help in, God forbid, future disasters? Is there a way to make things better so that things run a little bit more efficiently so more lives are saved? I thought, well, you know what? The place to probably start is with legislation. Life, of course, has a way of guiding you elsewhere. So when I graduated, the economy wasn't in the greatest of shape. The government had a hiring freeze on, and I ended up clerking for a judge and then doing some litigation and then eventually in-house and working more on the business side of things. So you kind of go where the river flows, so to speak, with a lot of things.
Tell us about the impetus that made you decide to become a happiness coach. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, honestly, it happened one evening. I was making dinner. I was stirring a pot on the stove, and my baby girl, she was about a year old at the time, was sitting on the floor, and she had a little play bowl and spoon that she was banging around. And she stopped and she looked up at me with her big brown eyes, kind of trying to get my attention. And she picked up that bowl and spoon and she started mimicking my stirring very deliberately to show me that she could do it. She was my only child. I thought it was the coolest thing I'd ever seen. I bent over and I said, yeah, just like mommy. And then I almost fainted on top of my baby because I had this sudden realization that she was copying my every move. And I was teaching her how to live a very depressed and very lonely and very unfulfilled life. So I didn't quite faint on top of her, but I sat down next to her and I promised her on that kitchen floor that I was going to learn everything there was to know about happiness. She was not going to go through the same things in life that I had gone through. I didn't think that I could be happy. I didn't think I was wired for it, but I was not going to let her suffer the same fate that I had suffered through. And so I set out to study happiness and purpose and meaning and what this great journey is really all about. I started studying with people I thought had the answers to it. I started reading. I was studying it like I was studying law when I was in law school. The funny thing is once I started implementing the things that these people were teaching me about, my life very rapidly started to change. There were a lot of people who weren't on board with my sudden, finding of all of this great knowledge, and things got actually very quiet and isolated for me for quite a bit. But my younger brother came to me one day and he said, hey, what are you doing? What are you reading? You're talking about this stuff, but I don't really know what it is. And I said, oh, it's, this and this and this. Why? And he said, well, you seem really happy and I've never seen you like that before. And do you think if it worked for you, that it might work for me? And I said, oh, well, it's worth a shot. Let's try it. And so I just started kind of giving him things that I had learned and making him read some of the things I had read and doing exercises. And his life started to change. And I was like, oh, there's something to this. Maybe I can take all of this knowledge and put it into a system where I could help other people so that they would not have to go through what I went through, the same things I was trying to avoid with my daughter, because I know I suffered unnecessarily for so long. Right. And that was kind of the beginning of me becoming the happiness coach.
In deciding to study individuals, what were some of the people that you looked to that you felt were great spiritual leaders and gurus that you felt that you could learn from?
Well, I was very ignorant of things, honestly, to start. So the best place I knew to start was in religion and philosophy. So I just started reading a lot of old text and things that you would probably get if you took a philosophy course in college. Okay. And then those things led me to other things on the internet. And I started reading about people that, were quoting these kinds of things or talking about these kinds of things. And eventually I think the universe sort of leads you to the people that you're supposed to be around. So I studied with monks and shaman and religious and spiritual, but also personal development and business development people. And one of the people that I kind of gravitated towards early on was Bob Proctor. He really sort of took me under his wing and taught me a lot. He's probably the first person that made me really look at myself and how I was contributing to my unhappiness instead of blaming my circumstances and my environment for it. He was a great help in showing me how I was in my own way. But from there, your awareness expands and you become aware of how many people are out there really doing good and putting good information out there. And so I would just take from different people, trial and error, see what would work, what didn't work. And that's kind of how my first book came about, because it's sort of the journey of what I tried that worked and what didn't work and what can work for you and what might not work for you.
Mm-hmm.
This is what I've learned. Everybody out there is kind of saying the same thing. It's just that we say it a little bit differently. And sometimes it just takes that right person for it to click in your own mind.
Yes.
So I always say to people, if you're really suffering and you feel like you can't find any help, keep searching, because sooner or later, someone will resonate with you. You know, the tone, the time of day, it will all come together for you. And finally, you'll be like, that makes sense. And that's what I'm going to follow.
Right. They turn either the light bulb, it's a light bulb moment for you, or however you want to, whatever analogy you want to use. And for me, one of those people that kind of expanded my thinking was Wayne Dyer. Would watch all the PBS specials and read his books and all of that, because he really just kind of broke things down in a way that made sense to me.
Right.
So I totally get what you're saying there.
It means the world to really have someone say it in your language.
Mm-hmm.
I used to teach undergraduate legal courses at some local universities. And every year, every semester, I would have these kids come to me and say, I can't take this class. I need to drop out. And I would say, no, give me 4 weeks, because learning this is like learning a new language. You don't understand the vocabulary. You don't understand how these things fit together. Let me try to teach it to you in a way that makes sense. And if you don't get it after 4 weeks, we'll talk again, but give me that long. It's just a matter of trying to find a new way of teaching it as well. And that's why I love coaching so much, because I learn from my clients. If I can't get through to you one way, I'm going to find another way to access that point where we're on the same page, right? So it makes me a better person. It makes me a better coach. It makes me a better communicator to keep trying those different levels. So if someone can't get there for you, don't think that you're not helpable. You just have to hear it a certain way for it to make sense. Eventually it will.
Why do you think there are so many people with a need for a happiness coach? What do you think's going on?
I think there's a lot of things going on. Number one, we as humans aren't as smart as we like to think we are. We really are very easily tricked into believing things that aren't true about ourselves, about our lives. We're very easily lured off the path of self-love and acceptance. We allow emotion and trauma to build this story around us that isn't true. And then we come to believe that story instead of the truth. Within our teens and into our early adulthood, have a very false sense of who we are already, and allow these false ideas to creep in when we're not paying attention, and grow around fear and anxiety and worry and self-doubt and all of those things that we allow to sort of perpetuate our day instead of going back to the basics and listening to our heart. So I think that's part of it. I also think that we do a terrible job of lifting ourselves up. And because of that, we do a terrible job of supporting other people. So I think that what we really need to realize is that each person needs to take care of themselves really well before we can help one another. And then that part will kind of fall into place. But we're not very good at taking care of ourselves, and we're not very good at listening and taking care of others. And so there's always this sort of hidden animosity with our interactions with people on a day-to-day basis.
There's a lot of truth in that and what you're saying. I also feel that when I grew up, there wasn't the internet. There wasn't social media. Kids didn't have phones in their pockets. And so, you weren't able to communicate with anyone, anytime, anywhere. And you certainly had no way of knowing what somebody was saying about you unless, your best friend told you or you heard a rumor or whatever. These days, all you have to do is go to Facebook or Instagram or Grapevine or whatever it is the kids are on, and you can see what somebody's thinking about you. Maybe they snapped a picture of you at your locker that you had no idea that somebody was doing, and then they post it and they say stuff. And then there's all this swirl around it. Kids don't know how to deal with that. And parents don't know how to deal with that, to even help their children.
I just think it's a magnifier of what's going on, right? I mean, there's always things being said behind your back. There are always people who were trying to make you look bad for whatever reason. There's always been jealousy. We don't teach our kids, mostly because we're not taught how to deal with those emotions. We don't teach our kids how to deal with those things. And so the social media becomes this huge magnification really of what's going on inside of us. It becomes this huge mirror hanging in front of us day after day, minute after minute. And if you're not able to process those things and you're not able to break them down inside of you and look at it for what it really is, then yeah, the fuel behind it is massive because it is literally a dopamine hit every second that you're on there. But if you have the right tools in place to deal with those things and to process and to understand, then social media shouldn't bother you any more than anything else in the world does, because you're able to see it for what it is and see yourself for what you are.
Yeah, but some of that comes too from maturity, I would say. And kids are still growing and they don't quite have that mature outlook and attitude and experience to be able to process everything. If they don't have someone in their life that can help balance them out, like their parents or an uncle or an aunt or even a girlfriend who's maybe their parents are more widely grounded, then they start to believe it after you get hit and hit and hit and hit and hit. I see the same thing in politics with untruths being said, and the people say it so much that other people who aren't governing their minds and aren't governing their thoughts, they start to accept it for the truth. Kind of what happened with January 6th to me. I think that's a big part of it as well.
My whole system for children and their anxiety is the mirror child system, which is if the parent can't cope with life and has no coping skills whatsoever, then that's how the child learns. That's exactly how the child learns how to go after their happiness too. If you're a parent that doesn't do those things, if you don't go after your passions, if you don't try and fail, if you don't do the things that make you happy, your child's never going to learn how to do that for themselves in life as well. We're huge role models every second of every day, just like my daughter was modeling my behavior when she was a baby. Children are doing it all the time, and we're giving them horrible examples to look at. It comes down to us as leaders, as parents, and the same thing goes in politics as well.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about what you do with your clients as a happiness coach.
Well, it kind of depends on the situation, because what I find is people come to me thinking they're looking for one thing and what they're really looking for is something else. So I spend a lot of time unraveling those layers on top to get to the heart of the matter. You're telling me you want this, but everything that you're talking about is pointing towards this. So a lot of it becomes, at the beginning anyway, exercises in being self-aware and being honest with yourself, really being able to say, this is what I want, and I see what I'm going to have to do to go after it. Right. And then the rest of the time is about changing your behavior so that you're acting in conformity with what you really want, which is not always the easiest thing to do, because number one, you have to believe all these false things about yourself. Number two, you have all these people in your life who are telling you can't do that or you shouldn't do that. You've got society in the other ear, and you have these perceived limitations, especially as we get older. I'm too old, I'm too this, I don't have enough money. So it's really about looking at all of these constructs that we put in place that when you start to break them down, you realize don't really have very much foundation except what you've built up in your own mind. So it's really about looking about the way that you look at things, your perspective, the way that you think about things, your belief system, and realizing that you can change that belief system.
Yeah, and wanting to change it and do the work.
Yeah.
That's the harder piece, for some people. Okay. I'm going to assume that, you work with clients however long you work with them before they start to change their...
Yeah, I mean, everybody's different, right? Everybody is starting from a different starting point, and everyone has different goals. So it's kind of hard to measure a time frame. But when I have someone come on with me, I ask for a 3-month commitment at minimum, because I find, the first month things are just kind of getting brewing a little bit. The second month you might start to see a little bit, but by the third month you should know really if changes are kind of sneaking in and, things are feeling different for you. Then of course I go on from there. But the 3 months I ask for up front, because these are not beliefs that you put upon yourself overnight. And so they're going to take a little bit of time to, disseminate and break down and rewire.
Danny, do you find that in working with some clients, they don't even know what they believe?
They may not know what they believe to the extent that they could clearly articulate it.
Okay.
A lot of people also underestimate how much their belief system is driving their behavior every single day. A lot of people want to think that they're a lot stronger than their mind, but when you really look at yourself and you're honest, you realize how easily you just fall in line with the way that you've always thought about things, or the way that you've always done things, or the way that your family's always done things. It's just easy. It's biologically like that. I mean, we're biochemically hardwired that way. Our brain likes to conserve energy. And so when it's easy, that's the way that our brain likes to go. So it's learning, that things become legitimately physically uncomfortable at times because you are fighting that biochemical reaction in your body that says, no, this isn't right. Yeah. So there's a lot at play there. It's not for the faint of heart, this happiness journey. It can be a little bit isolating at times because people don't like to see you change. That triggers all kinds of things in them as well.
Yeah, I can see how other people can react negatively to you changing, because somewhere in your head, oh yeah, well, I know this about that's who they are. And then when, they can't quite put their finger on who you are and what's going on with you, then it gives them a feeling of uncertainty, and then they don't know. And it causes uncertainty within themselves. When you were saying that what you believe, the influences in your life, and how they affect you, it made me think about something that I have a sister who's a few years older than I am. And our mother was sweet, but she was very disciplined, and she wanted you to do things her way. And so when we wanted to get under the skin of another, we say, you're being just like mom, when we were younger.
Yeah.
But now we say it and it's a compliment, or we laugh at it because she's gone and we love her, and we've had a good life, but you don't realize how those influences are ingrained in you and the things that you're doing. You think you're an original, and that's one of the things about growing up being a teenager. You're struggling to find that identity. But, once you get to be an adult, hopefully you have your identity, you know who you are. And when you hear that, you go, yeah, that's kind of nice. That's, that's part of who I am. So it just made me think of that. I just kind of wanted to throw that in there.
Yeah, for sure. But I mean, you can also change those things about you too. This morning I was driving to the gym and I had a memory pop up from a long time ago. And I was so depressed at the time that I was mean to this one individual. And it didn't even occur to me until now how distant and mean I must have come off, even though I was just really trying to survive myself at the time. Right? So I think that's, one thing that everything I've gone through has really taught me is a lot of compassion for people, that we're all struggling through things. And we all have these things that we're either trying to overcome, or they just have such a grasp on us that we can't seem to get over that hump. And understanding that you really can change that behavior when you understand why you're behaving that way. I remember my grandmother saying to me once, she's like, oh, your mother just worries about you so much. And can you ever really stop worrying? And I was like, yeah, Grandma, you can. She did not like that answer at all, right? She was a worry. That's what she did. And she was going to worry, and she didn't want to hear otherwise. But yeah, you can really stop worrying. You can put that down. You can train yourself to stop thinking that way. But what a concept to somebody who never was told that was even an option, or thought that was an option, right?
Right. Or they think that's the right thing to do always. And it's not.
Right. Right. And there was also that whole idea of, I grew up in a Roman Catholic family, and it was, kind of like the martyr thing to do. Like, I carry this cross, I have to worry because that's, what you're supposed to do, and all that guilt and everything that came with it against society and everything else. Right. But like, what if you didn't have to worry? How would that feel? Oh, it'd probably feel pretty good. Yeah. Don't you think maybe you could try it and just see?
I'm laughing because I grew up Roman Catholic too. Grades 1 through 12 in Catholic schools.
Yeah, there you go.
So tell us why the role of happiness coach is fun, attractive, and fulfilling to you.
It's fun because I get to talk about what I love every day. And I'm at the point now where people just sort of gravitate towards me, which is amazing. I'll be in line, waiting to order my coffee, and someone will just come up to me and start telling me their life story. It's almost like they can sense that that's what I do. So I really enjoy helping people. I know what it's like to be in that place. We didn't get to all of my story, but I was actually hospitalized. I was suicidal for quite some time, and it completely derailed my life. I ended up going through electroshock therapy treatment at the age of 19 because there was nothing that was helping the depression. And I knew that I was going to kill myself if I left the hospital one more time. All of that torture and pain that I went through that I did not need to go through. And I see that in other people's eyes when they approach me. And I don't want anyone to ever feel that desperation, that loneliness, that depression, that fear of not being able to be in control of yourself. So I think that, the fulfillment comes from seeing that I have some ways to help people overcome that, or to keep them from getting so bad that they end up in that place. But mostly just because I think people are helped by knowing that I do understand, and I'm listening. And that goes a long way for any human being. So that's what makes it fun and fulfilling for me, is just, that connection, that point where one soul sort of recognizes another soul's ability to understand.
Right. And knowing too, the other piece of that I feel is they're not the only one feeling that way. Somebody else has been through it. Somebody else has felt that. They truly understand. And I'm not so weird that I'm the only one that feels this way.
No, everyone is. I was in a meeting not that long ago with a legal client. This person was becoming a legal client, and we were having lunch, and he was talking about his life and, how amazing it was. And he just said something a certain way, and it kind of made me pause for a second. And I said, yeah, your life is amazing. It's really great. And I don't know where this came from or why I decided to say it, but it just came out. And I said, how come you're so unhappy? And he just started to tear up immediately. This big businessman at this, lunch that was trying to impress me. And he said, how did you know that? And I said, well, I can read it in people. I just see it in people now. It's this kind of this gift I've been given. And, I told him my story, and it's just amazing how many people are going around hiding it and harboring that pain, and how destructive that is year after year after year. How different it could be if there were more people out there who were listening, and it was safe to say, sometimes things are really hard.
Yeah, and they are. And you deal with it as best you can. And, you go to people, if you have people in your network that can possibly help you, deal with it. But that was quite a surprise for him, I'm sure.
It was
a nice surprise, because you were able to speak to him on a whole nother level that he wasn't expecting to receive that day.
It's hard for me because I do sort of feel the pain of the world around me a lot. That can be draining at times. But again, it's being able to hold space, right? Being able to separate myself from what's going on. Got my to-do list in my head, and I've got to go here, and I've got to get this done, and I've got to be here at a certain time. And then, oh my goodness, I forgot to send that email. It's so nice to be able to bring myself out of that and then recognize, someone really needs my help right now, and I can stop what I'm doing that's really not that important at the end of the day, I guess, and really touch another human being. And then they can take that on with them, and hopefully they pay it forward and help someone else in return.
How can parents help their kids and even themselves with the anxiety that they see in their children?
Yeah, they have to help themselves first. Like I said, show me an anxious kid and I'll show you an anxious parent. And maybe the parent's anxiety doesn't look exactly like the child's, but it's certainly there. So you have to be really aware of your own behavior and what you're demonstrating. Because if you're stressed out, your child is going to pick up on that. And then the first thing that you can kind of do is lie about it, right? As parents, we want to protect our children. And so if our child comes to us and says, oh, you seem stressed out, however they verbalize that, and you say, oh, no, mommy's fine or daddy's fine. But you're not, your child can feel that discrepancy, right? They understand the energy that they are that they're feeling is not matching the words that you're saying. And so
Exactly.
they start to not trust what you're saying to them. And that feeds their anxiety, right? Because
Right.
there's something that's not right. And I know it's not right, but you're telling me it's okay. And so what am I supposed to do with this energy? You really have to go out and show them that you're dealing with things, right? Number one is go after the things in life that you want to go after. Let your children see that. Let them see you fail at your attempts at this thing. And then, of course, show them that you pick yourself up and that you try again. You know, as parents, again, I think we want to protect our kids and not show them that things are, you know, not going our way, or that things might be, we end up giving this sort of this false sense of how easy things are when that's just not the case. I mean, people who achieve great things in life work really hard for it. And, you know, I'm
Yes.
not saying that you should be giving them all sorts of adult information that they, you know, can't process, but they do need to see you struggle at times and handle it, right? If you're running around freaking out over the littlest of things, then that is how they learn how to deal with things. And if you're going around miserable all the time because you don't take care of yourself, or because you don't carve out time to do the things that you love, or you don't, you know, sit and allow all of this negative energy throughout the day to process, you know, do something like meditation or breath work or exercise, anything to help, you know, facilitate the passage of those energies, and you've got it all bottled up, your kids are going to learn how to do that as well. I mean, we become a process of our environment unless someone intervenes and says, no, you don't have to think this way. You don't have to look at it this way. Just because school says this and your teacher says this and your friends say this and everyone says this doesn't mean that that has to be the way. So really talking to your kids too and trying to understand how they are processing things and showing them there are other ways to look at things as well. And then, you know, you can implement so many little things throughout the day to help them too. I have on my website, you know, tips, things that you can keep in your pocket just to help you throughout the day with anxiety. And there's a necklace that you can get. It looks like a whistle, but it doesn't make a noise. And you can wear it around your neck and hide it in your shirt so no one even knows you have it. But when you're feeling really anxious, you can take it out, and it makes you slow down your exhale when you blow through the little whistle type thing, right? So what that does is it makes you switch your focus to your breathing, and that turns off that switch in your mind that's racing on this idea that I just can't let go. I can't let go. And then it also lowers your heart rate down. So you don't have that pounding going on in your chest. And so you don't feel that anxiety physically inside of you. So many little things that you can do throughout the day just to make you return back to this whole idea of, you know what, I'm okay. And things are crazy around me, but I'm okay. And I'm going to show myself that I'm okay by being really good to myself.
If someone wanted to learn more about you, Dannie, where should they go?
Yeah, you can go to my website. It's DannieDeNovo.com. All of my books are also available on Amazon, which is really easy to get for most people. And on my social media, I'm at Dannie De Novo on all platforms.
Wonderful. And I am really pleased that you spent some time today talking about what you're doing as a happiness coach, and just sharing what parents can do and what people can do for themselves to kind of get out of that unhappy circle that they may be running in.
Yeah, thank you. I would love to stress the fact that you do not have to be trapped in that cycle. So please reach out to me or to somebody who's saying something that resonates with you, and find a way to pull yourself out of it, because you're worth it.
Thanks for listening, and your support's a blessing. If you enjoyed the podcast, give us a positive rating on Apple. It will help our podcast ranking on all the major sites like Apple, Google, Spotify, etc. We release new podcasts every 2 weeks on the first and third Wednesdays. Now your support is needed. Keep listening and share these career-changing podcasts with your friends, your family, your coworkers, and anyone else you feel it will bless. In addition to the major sites, they can also find these podcasts on my website at insiderscareerclub.com. Now, if you're not happy with your career, let me help you. I can help you get your career on track. Sign up for a free coaching call with me today. Before you go, let's speak victory over you. You have a bright future. good breaks are looking for you, and new doors are about to swing wide open with opportunity. Believe it. Until next time, take care.